Hello and welcome. You're with DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy. Let's get you the latest first in News Hour. BRICS Africa Outreach and BRICS Plus dialogue at the third and final day of the 15th summit in Johannesburg. BRICS chair will also announce the outcomes of the summit on Thursday. India's Chandrayaan-3 rover ramps down from the lander, and with that, India takes a walk on the moon. Protesters arrested while attempting to storm the Japanese embassy in Seoul after Japan initiates the discharge of Fukushima nuclear power plant's contaminated water into the ocean. Wagner chief Prigozhin has reportedly been killed in a plane crash in Russia, with 8 bodies found at the crash site. And India's chess prodigy R. Praggnandhaa faces tiebreakers on Thursday against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen in the World Cup final. All right, let's first update you on what's happening on the third day of the BRICS summit in South Africa. Well, the final day of the BRICS summit in Johannesburg will witness Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi attending the BRICS Africa Outreach and BRICS Plus dialogues. This is expected to be followed by the announcement about the outcomes of the 15th BRICS summit. This will be done by the BRICS chairperson and President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. The Indian Prime Minister is also expected to hold bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the summit. He is likely to hold a bilateral meeting with Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and Mozambique President Philippe Nyusi. DD India's correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh has sent us this report. Listen in.
Yesterday, we saw the plenary session taking place where the core BRICS members, leaders sat together, spoke about the issues facing the BRICS grouping and the way forward. Today, the more expansive influence of BRICS is going to be on display. There are sessions on Africa outreach as well as BRICS Plus, which basically means the manner in which the BRICS nations, the leadership, will engage with the leadership of other developing economies, other emerging economies. There's a special focus on Africa. The theme also speaks about BRICS and Africa closer cooperation. There is, of course, there's been a lot of excitement about the expansion of BRICS. Who are the new members who are going to be part of BRICS? What will be the modalities? Those are the points that may also be discussed today in the engagements. Besides that, there are some bilaterals also lined up for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, especially with leaders from the African countries, Mozambique, Ethiopia. There is also a bilateral with the leader of Iran. So in that sense, there's a wider and closer engagement with the Global South on day 3 of the BRICS summit.
Meanwhile, BRICS leaders have unanimously expressed interest in expanding the bloc, although details on how it will work still need to be ironed out. More than 20 countries have made formal applications to be part of the group of major developing economies. The bloc currently consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. More from Shubhendu Ghosh in Johannesburg.
There are many challenges faced by the developing world, which this grouping, one of the most influential grouping of the developing world, of the Global South, has been catered to. It has been able to successfully mitigate the earlier dependence on developed economies and therefore is making an important dent in the global order, in the sense that it is bringing in the centrality of the Global South, wherein the majority of the world population lives not in the same economic prosperity, not in the same infrastructure prosperity that perhaps the developed countries live. So in that sense, the influence of BRICS nations has increased, and therefore most of the Global South nations, developing nations, emerging economies nations want closer ties with this grouping, want to be part of these groupings so that they can directly engage in the development of the Global South and their development of their own countries and meeting their own national priorities. So in that sense, there is a great interest in close engagement with BRICS. it's over 20 countries have formally applied for it. There are going to be very, very stringent guidelines for the expansion, for the new members to come in. We don't know how many or who are the new members. We'll get some insight when the Johannesburg Declaration comes out, which is like the summing up of what happened in the 15th edition of BRICS sometime later today, local time, Johannesburg. But it certainly is a way forward. The BRICS leaders have also spoken about their openness, their willingness, and their interest, in fact, to invite more members into their fold. But the process is kept stringent so that the influence, the impact, the value of BRICS is not diluted.
And we've got more coming in for you from Shubhendu Ghosh in Johannesburg. He's telling us about what's upcoming in the G20 summit in New Delhi as well next month, and how a fruitful BRICS summit will be for India in strengthening relations with the global south. We have to look at BRICS and G20 as independent institutions and groupings. But yes, there is going to be a great interlinkages, great overlapping. After all, India's presidency at G20, there is greater emphasis on the priorities of Global South. We know that before the formal G20 engagements began, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made the initiative of engaging with, there's a conference of G20 nations from across the world. So in that sense, India has made its priority very clear that the voice of the Global South must be heard loud and clear. And BRICS, if you look at the congregation, is in fact the most influential congregation of the Global South nations. BRICS in its charter, BRICS by its inception and at its heart is in fact talking about the key concerns of the Global South nations. And in fact, Day 3, as I mentioned, is a day of greater outreach to the other nations of the Global South, from Latin America in particular, Asia, Africa, and the manner in which this grouping can in fact expand its influence and partnership with other nations, and that will also be reflected in significant manner at the G20. So in that sense, great parallels and great connectedness between the two major global conferences. Now, what also happened was Chinese President Xi Jinping unexpectedly skipped a scheduled speech at a key multilateral business forum in South Africa on Tuesday. Another Chinese minister took his place instead. And it seems China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing is in denial about the fact that President Xi was a no-show. Here's Andrew Wood in Hong Kong.
At the daily briefing at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing for the media, one journalist asked why President Xi had not given a speech as expected at the business forum at the BRICS summit on Tuesday. Now, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs just basically answered a different question. He said Mr. Xi gave a speech at the forum yesterday, and this is what he said, and then talked at length about what had been in the speech, supposedly by Mr. Xi. A little bit later, after a few more questions and answers, the journalist asked again to try and get some clarity. He said that he understood that the Minister of Commerce from China had given the speech and not Mr. Xi. And the spokesperson for the ministry just said, well, I've given my answer already, and let me say that this summit is going to be a success. I think that China is going to have some problems with people trusting it, because at the moment the government doesn't seem to want to acknowledge some problems. You may remember a month or two ago, the foreign minister wasn't seen in public for a month. And then it was announced there was a new foreign minister. And the name of the old foreign minister was removed from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website. It was like he never existed. And whenever there was a press briefing, the spokespeople just basically stonewalled. They didn't answer the question, what had happened to the previous foreign minister? Where was he? What was he doing now? What had happened? And of course, there's also the issue of youth unemployment. The number of people who have no jobs, aged between 16 and 24 in China's big cities, is a record high, well over 20%, 21%, so more than a fifth. And the Statistics Bureau says that it's no longer going to publish figures for youth unemployment. It said that it needed to, reevaluate, come up with a new methodology on how to count the number of youths unemployed. which just really brings an awful lot of attention to the fact that youth unemployment in China is very, very high. That's a worrying economic sign. It's a worrying social sign too. But as I say, I think that the Chinese government's going to lose a lot of trust if it carries on like this, of ignoring issues, ignoring problems, not answering questions about them, and pretending that they don't exist. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew Wood, reporting for DD India.
So China needs to listen in to all the questions that are being raised as well, and answer some of them too. And we'll keep getting you more on what's coming in from the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg as and when it comes in. But for the moment, let's tell you what's coming up next. India's moon mission marches on after making a successful soft landing, deploys its rover to roam the lunar South Pole. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually addresses G20 trade ministers meeting in Indian city of Jaipur, says G20 to rebuild confidence in trade and investment. And delegates from G20 member nations attend the 4th G20 Cultural Working Group meeting in the sacred Indian city of Varanasi. G20 Culture Shaping the Global Narrative for Inclusive Growth to be launched.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
Ma Hindi hasti.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and India's Chandrayaan 3 Praggnandhaa rover has exited the spacecraft and begun its exploration of the lunar surface. Taking to platform X, formerly known as Twitter, the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, on Thursday informed that Chandrayaan 3, the rover, ramped down from the lander and India has taken a walk on the moon. As India becomes only the fourth nation in the world to successfully land on the moon with Chandrayaan 3 and the first on the lunar South Pole, this historic event has not only solidified India's position in the space race, it has garnered widespread international response. Along with global leaders and international organizations, world media has also been covering this landmark achievement far and wide. US publication Washington Post covered the event with a headline, "India lands a spacecraft softly on the moon's surface." The New York Times said, "India is on the moon. Lander's success moves nation to next space chapter." And another main headline asked the question, what's next for India in space exploration? Reuters has called it a victory cry of a new India. And for more on this, I'm joined by my colleague Amit Mukherjee in our studio. Amit, first of all, good afternoon. And how did you feel going through all those reports that you perused and put together for us in terms of how the world is acknowledging what India has achieved?
Gautam, first of all, I think it was a wonderful experience going through the whole landing process yesterday. And apart from the Indians, everybody across the world was probably watching that, and it was quite evident in the kind of headlines which everybody gave us today. And around the time when the touchdown was happening around 6 o'clock, I think almost all the international channels, they cut live into it. Like if you look at BBC, the BBC and they have been covering it for the last 15 minutes from the time the lander started its rough braking and all. It was every minute of it was being captured by BBC. They had just cut live into the whole feed which was being aired by ISRO. So I think everybody was quite exhilarated, and the fact that India is the first country to have achieved this feat was well acknowledged everybody across the world. In fact, the media played it out pretty well, whether it's Le Monde, whether it's the New York Times, Financial Times, Boston Globe, they all had it on the top of their, of their front pages. I mean, it definitely in all newspapers,
both the web editions and the physical the paper.
Absolutely. In fact, the website still has it. One of the every news website has given it a prominent display on the landing page, and it was carried well on the front pages. And in fact, it was the top headline in most of the papers. Most of them did not carry if not a write-up, the picture of the final moments of Chandrayaan 3 making a touchdown. That was the main picture which was carried in almost all the papers.
And did they have some editorial takes on it as well in terms of its implications?
Definitely. The fact that India is the first one to have landed a spacecraft at the South Pole was carried by almost everybody. It was given the status that India is now the fourth country to have achieved this feat after US, China and the erstwhile USSR, which actually landed spacecraft. But again, to do it for the first time at the South Pole, I think India is the first country, and it was well acknowledged by almost everybody.
And did they also cover the reactions of the various international leaders as well?
Well, it's still coming, Gautam, because most of the publications, they are still, we are yet to get it because they have come out with their publications late last night. In fact, early, some of them were done early this morning. So, but yeah, definitely everybody has sent in their congratulatory messages to the Indian Space Research Organization as well as the Indian government. In fact, UN has also, made a formal statement yesterday congratulating the entire event, and everybody is looking forward to it, because landing the spacecraft is just the beginning of it. Now what it does and the kind of experiments that are lined up, I think everybody is looking forward to it, because after all, it's going to decide whether moon is the next destination for the humans, whether life is possible there or not. So a whole range of experiments which are lined up, and everybody is looking forward to that.
And we also saw images of Prime Minister Modi himself being congratulated in Johannesburg by several world leaders who were there as part of the BRICS summit, and of course a lot of other leaders have also been invited apart from the core leaders.
It was definitely a very proud moment, and the Prime Minister quite rightly, and he actually joined, if we all saw that Prime Minister joined the entire ISRO team, during the final countdown when it was touching down. And yes, it's his speech after that, it was quite inspiring. And it also talked about how India plans to take this journey ahead, the space journey ahead. So it was fantastic, I think.
And did you note in the web editions of this journey of Chandrayaan 3 through the deployment of the rover, is that also getting some traction there? Because the story's just begun after the landing, so a large part of it is still left. We've got 14 days to go.
Absolutely. In fact, most of these international websites, they have carried video capsules of what the next the steps would be. In fact, one of the websites, they did a complete package on what would the next steps be, what are the experiments that are lined up. Also, they picked up all the various instruments which are there on board and the kind of experiments they will be conducting, and what it means to the space community and the science community in terms of the findings that's going to come out in the next 14 days. When the
and did you also get to see what kind of hits are these articles getting on different websites?
Well, it's every minute it's going up by hundreds, and almost most of them have crossed the 1 million mark, because the interest is there. It's kind of attracted the interest of everybody across the globe, whether it's the science community, whether it's people, whether it's people who are associated with astronomy and astronomy. I think it's a fantastic achievement as far as mankind is concerned, I would say.
And let's hope that this particular mission keeps making headlines in the coming days as well. We have a lot of expectations. The world has expectations from it. Thanks for joining me and talking about it, Amit.
Thanks, Gautam. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now United Nations chief has also congratulated, like Amit mentions, India on the successful landing of Chandrayaan 3 on the lunar surface. India's ambassador to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj, has said the successful soft landing of ISRO's moon mission Chandrayaan 3 is a historic moment for humanity.
We kind of shared this morning. The president congratulates India, obviously. It was within the OPGA office, many of the Indian colleagues were celebrating that achievement.
Let me quote the Prime Minister of India himself on this. India's successful moon mission is not India's alone. This is a year in which the world is witnessing India's G20 presidency. Our approach of one Earth, one family, one future is resonating across the globe. This human-centric approach that we represent has been welcomed universally. Our moon mission is also based on the same human-centric approach. Therefore, this success belongs to all of humanity, and it will help moon missions by other countries in the future. The Prime Minister went on to say that I am confident that all countries in the world, including those from the global south, are capable of achieving such feats. We can all aspire for the moon and beyond.
So you just heard the reactions of both the UN chief spokesperson as well as India's permanent representative to the United Nations, which is the Indian ambassador to the United Nations. Now, Moscow has also congratulated India for successfully landing a spacecraft on the moon's south pole, days after Russia's own mission crashed into the moon's surface. Russia stressed the importance of this breakthrough for the entire humanity. Dasha Chernashova is in Moscow with more.
Russia congratulates India on the successful landing on the moon's south pole. Russia's space agency Roscosmos says the exploration of the moon is important for the whole of humanity. In the future, it may become a platform for the deeper mastering of space. Russian President Vladimir Putin also congratulated Indian Prime Minister, saying that it is a major step in space exploration and the evidence of India's impressive progress in science and technology. On the sidelines of the BRICS summit, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also congratulated his Indian counterpart. Experts from Russia's Academy of Sciences say India made an important breakthrough that would keep the country among the most high-tech and industrial states of the world. But this landing took place just days after Russia's own mission, first to the moon in 47 years, Luna 25, crashed into the moon's surface. The craft was supposed to land on the moon's south pole too, but spun out of control after a problem preparing for pre-landing orbit. rocket. Russian scientists say most likely there will be no relaunch of the Luna 25 since the vehicles for the next missions are already prepared and it will take a while to change their programs. Dasha Chernashova in Moscow reporting for DD India.
Let's also get you a glimpse of how the Indian diaspora has really exulted over ISRO's success in Athens. People of India region expressed happiness after the successful landing of Chandrayaan-3. They are excited to welcome Indian Prime Minister Modi to Greece as well. Prime Minister Modi will be heading there after Johannesburg. DD India's Praggnandhaa gets you more on their reactions.
So we are here with the Indian diaspora in Athens, and obviously a lot of excitement amongst the diaspora on the success of Chandrayaan-3. Besides that, obviously a lot of excitement in terms of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival to Athens, which is going to be in some time from now.
कोई प्रधानमंत्री हमारे देश में आ रहा है, ग्रीस में आ रहा है, तो हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा है। और फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई वांट टू थैंक फॉर एवरीबॉडी और इंडियन कम्युनिटी फॉर हिप हिप हुर्रे फॉर द चंद्रयान-3। इंडियन कम्युनिटी 10-15 हज़ार के आसपास है और सभी ग्रीक नेशनलिटी वाले और बाहर वाले सभी इंडियन कुजीन को बहुत ज्यादा लाइक करते हैं यहाँ पे।
We see butter chicken, we see naan, we see everything that's very much relatable to Indian cuisine, very much Indian. So that's what people relish here. So how do you see, the Indian diaspora here and Prime Minister Narendra Modi coming here, his global outreach in that matter?
Well, I can see the spark in people's eyes, like how excited they are to see our Prime Minister Narendra Modi here in Greece, and like everybody is so excited to welcome him.
How is the excitement? Is there a buzz in Athens of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival here?
Yes, absolutely. It's a full of buzz about the Prime Minister Modi's visit. I am personally very much excited to know about the Modi's visit. So now that today with the Chandrayaan-3 successfulness, from now onwards, if at all anybody is talking about the space technology, they will see India is the person. India is going to lead the space technology.
In the history before Modi, and the India is not grooming, but now after a lot of decade now because of the Modi, and India GDP is growing too much.
Very excited. I'm visiting from the US and hearing the excitement and the Greece culture for welcoming Modi ji. We're very excited to see coming here.
Definitely a historical visit that comes after 4 decades, but definitely something to watch out for when Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also be addressing a beautiful community event here and talk to the Indian diaspora, which is one of his unique things that he does everywhere, every place he goes, to connect to the bridges, the living bridges between India and the globe, that in terms of the Indian diaspora. With camera person Shailendra Chauhan, this is Praggnandhaa for DD India from Athens, Greece.
That is something that everyone is looking forward to, Prime Minister Modi's visit to Athens. Still to come on DD India News are Wagner head, who in June attempted to topple Russia's military leadership, was on board a plane that crashed with all passengers killed. The first Republican presidential debate sees 8 candidates involved in fiery debate. They make their case as alternatives to frontrunner Donald Trump. And the Republican debate comes on a day when Donald Trump is due to surrender to authorities in the US state of Georgia.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ilal Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India. Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
Ma Hindi hasti.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go on any further, another look at our top stories. BRICS Africa outreach and BRICS Plus dialogue at the third and final day of the 15th summit in Johannesburg. BRICS chair to announce the outcomes of the summit on Thursday as well. India's Chandrayaan-3 rover ramps down from the lander, and with that, India takes a walk on the moon. Protesters arrested while attempting to storm the Japanese embassy in Seoul after Japan initiates the discharge of Fukushima nuclear power plant's contaminated water into the ocean. Wagner chief Prigozhin has reportedly been killed in a plane crash in Russia, with 8 bodies found at the crash site. And India's chess prodigy Praggnandhaa faces tiebreakers on Thursday against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen in the World Cup final. And we're taking you back to our top story related to the BRICS summit. It's the final and third day where important events are slated in terms of an Africa outreach, a BRICS Plus meet, and as well as the release of the declaration of the 15th summit as well. Joining us now is former senior diplomat Prabhu Dayal with us to talk about it. Good afternoon to you from Delhi, Mr. Prabhu Dayal. What do you make of the prospects of these events that are to be held today in Johannesburg, their significance?
Well, thank you for having me on your show. The events which are going to be taking place in Johannesburg today would be very significant. There are some bilateral meetings which our Prime Minister would be having. Of course, I'm not up to date about whether or not there is a bilateral meeting with Xi Jinping which is coming through.
Not
of course, that will depend on the convenience of both sides and whether the two sides want that meeting. But there are other bilateral important meetings. And of course, the meetings within the context of the BRICS itself, they are very significant. You know, I must emphasize the fact that India is emphasizing the importance which it is attaching to the needs of the countries of the global south. Prime Minister in his address emphasized this aspect, and he even said that India wants to accord a permanent membership of the G20 to the African Union, because the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war and the global economic crisis has been felt very acutely by the countries of the global south, including, of course, the countries in Africa. And since the meeting is taking place in Johannesburg, I think the Prime Minister went out of his way to emphasize the importance which India attaches to the idea of addressing the needs and requirements of all the developing countries, and especially those from Africa.
Okay.
And significantly, you know, the Prime Minister was able to outline various areas where he thinks cooperation is necessary, such as, of course, the space sector, traditional medicine, technology. Then he pointed out, of course, that railway research, cooperation between the MSMEs, setting up a BRICS database, all these require cooperation. And I think today's deliberations would be in furtherance of some of the suggestions that he has made.
Okay.
So, of course, one important issue is that of the expansion of BRICS, because this is been recurrently mentioned in the media, and it has also figured in some of the speeches yesterday at BRICS.
Yes, in fact, I wanted you to contextualize in terms of what's expected to unfold today in the context of what happened yesterday over expansion, where Prime Minister Modi very clearly said that India is in favor of expansion, but it should be with consensus. And can we really expect to hear about expansion today itself in the declaration, or will we just get some guidelines?
Well, Gautam, your guess is as good as mine. Frankly speaking, India has indicated that we have an open mind on this issue. But there should be some criteria, some guidelines for inducting new members. I'm sure that India has been able to get across its point that we do not want the G20 to be, the BRICS to become an institution which is aligned against the West. You know, two of the important members of BRICS are Russia and China, and they are becoming increasingly hostile towards the Western countries, especially the United States. So I don't think India wants BRICS to become an anti-West institution. So we would be very careful in outlining the criteria and insisting that the right sort of countries should be included. I understand that a number of countries, 23 countries, have applied for membership. Some countries like, for instance, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Egypt, these have maintained a neutral profile in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war. They have not been taking sides. So their thinking is on pretty similar lines as us. Moreover, you know, one of the key institutions which has come up under BRICS is the bank, the new bank, and it requires more funding. And therefore, a country like Saudi Arabia or a country like the UAE could become very useful because they would make contributions towards strengthening the
membership of BRICS for this expansion bid. Is Iran and Prime Minister Modi is having a bilateral meeting with his president as well today?
Yes, Prime Minister would be having bilateral meetings, very significant ones. And I think that the thrust of what the Prime Minister will be trying to put across will be that there is a need to address the concerns of the Global South. And in all his bilateral meetings, I think this is one theme that he will go out of his way to lay emphasis on.
All right, we'll try and carry this on forward, but for the moment we're cutting across to Johannesburg, where we're getting images. You can see them on the screen now. These are live images of the leaders coming on stage, and
we may be seated. Thank you. Your Excellencies, heads of states and government from the BRICS member states, the honorable ministers present from BRICS member states, ladies and gentlemen of the media, welcome to this session, the session that will present the Johannesburg Declaration of the 15th BRICS Summit. President Ramaphosa will, as chair of the summit and of BRICS, will kick off with the opening statements, and thereafter the president will invite his counterparts and colleagues from the BRICS member states to also present their statement. I'd like to now invite President Ramaphosa to kick us off with the media statement. Mr. President.
Thank you, Program Director, Your Excellencies, and various guests who are here with us, members of the media, and leaders of various organizations. It is a pleasure to present to you two matters The first is to inform and advise you that the BRICS leaders in the 15th BRICS Summit have over the past 2 days had occasion to have discussions both in a retreat form as well as in a proper official summit. And in the course of those discussions, have reached a conclusion to adopt the Johannesburg II Declaration as a declaration that encompasses and covers the various issues that the leaders had to decide on. These matters have been in discussion for over a year in various iterations and meetings being prepared by our Sherpas and ministers in various meetings, and in the end, a declaration has now been adopted as Declaration 2, a Johannesburg Declaration 2, and is adopted. And now we come to the media statement, which I will read out, and thereafter each one of the BRICS leaders will make a statement. We have successfully concluded the 15th BRICS Summit yesterday. It is the first BRICS Summit to be hosted in person since COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent global travel restrictions. Leading up to the summit, there was a wide-ranging BRICS business forum attended by some 1,500 business people from BRICS countries as well as from other countries from around the globe. This business forum was aimed at attracting investment, promoting collaboration, and showcasing opportunities within South Africa, the African continent, and indeed BRICS countries as well. We had an opportunity to receive a report from the President of the New Development Bank, Dilma Rousseff, on the vision and the role of the bank and the role that it intends to play to support infrastructure and sustainable development in Africa and in the global south. We celebrated the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the BRICS Business Council and welcomed their report and the subsequent recommendations that they made to the leaders. We also welcomed the work of the BRICS Women's Business Alliance in their first in-person engagement with the BRICS leaders. We particularly welcomed the participation of youth representatives in the summit. We endorsed our expectations for the BRICS economic partnership to generate tangible benefits for our communities and deliver viable solutions for common challenges faced by the global south. We shared our vision of BRICS as a champion of the needs and concerns of the peoples of the global south. These include the need for beneficial economic growth, sustainable development, and the reform of multilateral systems. We reiterate our commitment to inclusive multilateralism and upholding international law, including the purposes and principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. We are concerned about ongoing conflicts in many parts of the world. We stress our commitment to the peaceful resolution of differences and disputes through dialogue and inclusive consultation. The summit noted that an unbalanced recovery from the hardships of COVID-19 pandemic is exacerbating inequality across the world. We encourage multilateral financial institutions and international organizations to play a constructive role in building global consensus on economic policies. We have noted that there is global momentum for the use of local currencies, alternative financial arrangements, and alternative payment systems. As BRICS, we are ready to explore opportunities for improving the stability, reliability, and fairness of the global financial architecture. In this regard, BRICS leaders have tasked their finance ministers and central bank governors, as appropriate, to consider the issue of local currencies, payment instruments, and platforms, and to report back to the BRICS leaders by the next summit. This summit reaffirmed the importance of BRICS people-to-people exchanges in enhancing mutual understanding, friendship, and cooperation. The summit appreciates the progress made over the last year in the fields of media, culture, education, sports, arts, youth, civil society, and academic exchanges. We adopted the Johannesburg II Declaration, which reflects key BRICS messages on matters of global economic, financial, and political importance. It demonstrates the shared values and common interests that underlie our mutual beneficial cooperation as the 5 BRICS countries. BRICS itself is a diverse group of nations. It is an equal partnership of countries that have differing views but have a shared vision for a better world. As the 5 BRICS countries, we have reached agreement on the guiding principles, standards, criteria, and procedures of the BRICS expansion process, which has been in discussion for quite a while. We have consensus on the first phase of this expansion process, and other phases will follow. We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024. We value the interests of other countries in building a partnership with BRICS. We have tasked our foreign ministers to further develop the BRICS partner country model and a list of prospective partner countries and report by the next summit. Today we will be hosting leaders from Africa and the Global South in the BRICS Africa Outreach and the BRICS Plus Dialogue. This is so that we can have an inclusive dialogue on key issues affecting developing economies and identify actions that we can take together towards a more equitable, inclusive, and representative world. May I conclude by thanking the leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, and China, together with their delegations, for participating in this most successful 15th BRICS summit held in Johannesburg, South Africa. Through this summit, BRICS has embarked on a new chapter in its effort to build a world that is fair, a world that is just, a world that is also inclusive and prosperous. I thank you. I'm now going to ask President Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, to be the first to speak, and thereafter I'll ask the others to follow. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank especially President Ramaphosa and his team for the very warmth hosting of the BRICS meeting and for the first face-to-face summit meeting at BRICS. I also would like to congratulate to the team of the foreign affairs ministers for all the extraordinary work that they did to conduct and the production of this declaration that we just signed here. The last time that I participated in a BRICS meeting was in 2010, and I am deeply, very well impressed with the maturity of the BRICS and with the results that we managed to reach. In 2011, with South Africa joining the group, gave much more representation to the groups, and including one of the regions that grow most in the world. Many said that we were too much different so that we can forge a common view. The experience, nevertheless, demonstrates the contrary. Our diversity strengthens the fight for a new international order that will accommodate pluralism in terms of geography, economy, and politics in the 21st century. In this world of transition, the BRICS offers us a source of creative solutions for the challenges that we face. The relevance of the BRICS is confirmed by the growing interest of other countries demonstrate to join our grouping. Amongst the many results of the summit meeting of today, I could stress the enhancement of the BRICS, including new members. As President Ramaphosa just said, it's with great pleasure that Brazil gives the welcome to the BRICS, to Saudi Arabia, to Argentina, to the new members, to Egypt, to the United Arab Emirates, to Ethiopia, and to Iran. Now, the GDP
eleva-se para 36% do PIB global em paridade de poder de compra e 46% da população mundial. O BRICS continuará aberto a novos candidatos e para isso aprovamos também critérios e procedimentos para futuras adesões. Aprovamos ainda a criação de um grupo de trabalho para estudar a adoção de uma moeda de referência dos BRICS. Essa medida poderá aumentar nossas opções de pagamento e reduzir nossas vulnerabilidades. Quero ressaltar igualmente a decisão relacionada à reforma da governança global, especialmente em relação ao Conselho de Segurança da ONU. Por fim, dedico uma mensagem especial ao querido Alberto Fernandes, presidente da Argentina.
Alberto Fernandes, president of Argentina, great friend of Brazil and of the developing world. We will continue to move forward side by side with our brothers, Argentinians, in another international forum. We will continue to advocate themes with direct impact of the quality of lives of our peoples, as fighting hunger, poverty, and inequality, and the promotion of sustainable development. We will promote the overcome of all ways of inequality that exists in the world, and that the BRICS will continue to be a driving force of a new international order that will have more fairness and an indispensable player to promote peace, to promote multilateralism, and in the defense of the international order and rule. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, President Lula da Silva, for your statement. It now gives me a privilege to ask President Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, to speak.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, dear friends, dear colleagues, just like all the efforts they have made during our joint work. I appreciate their efforts, and I would like to note, as it turned out, this was a challenging work, and President Ramaphosa showed unique diplomatic mastery as we negotiated all the positions, including when it comes to BRICS expansion. Just now, Brazilian counterpart, President Lula da Silva, highlighted the most important aspects for all of us, and I would like to especially emphasize the issues for settlement, united currency issue. This is a challenging task. Nevertheless, we will move towards resolution. And the second thing that I would like to mention, it has to do with ensuring settlements between our countries in economic terms. I would like to congratulate new BRICS members on the full membership. They will assume their membership next year. Let me assure all of the colleagues that we will keep up with the work that we have launched to expand BRICS' influence in the world. Namely, I mean ensuring practical collaboration with new BRICS members and with those who will be working with BRICS within the outreach format, with our partners who pay attention to cooperation with our group and that are willing to work with us. We really appreciate and respect that, and we will definitely ensure a smooth work. Certainly, we will consult with all the colleagues on how to best arrange this work during discussions at the level of foreign ministers and other agencies. We will establish the relevant rules and procedures so that the role and importance of BRICS in the world continue to grow. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, President Putin, for your statement. We now call upon Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India. I asked him this morning whether the lunar module is still firmly on the ground on the moon, and he said yes. So yesterday we congratulated India for landing a lunar module on the moon. So maybe he'll be outlining the scientific aspects of how the lunar module is going to proceed forward. Prime Minister.
Excellencies, मीडिया के साथियों, नमस्कार। सबसे पहले मैं राष्ट्रपति मेरे मित्र रामाफोसा जी को इस ब्रिक्स समिट के सफल आयोजन के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं, उनका अभिनंदन करता हूं। मुझे खुशी है कि 3 दिन की इस बैठक से कई सकारात्मक परिणाम सामने आए हैं। हमने ब्रिक्स की 15वीं वर्षगांठ पर इसका विस्तार करने का महत्वपूर्ण फैसला लिया है। जैसा मैंने कल कहा था, भारत ने ब्रिक्स की सदस्यता में विस्तार का हमेशा से पूरी तरह समर्थन किया है। भारत का ये मत रहा है कि नए सदस्यों के जुड़ने से ब्रिक्स एक संगठन के रूप में मजबूत तथा हमारे सभी साझा प्रयासों को एक नया बल देने वाला होगा। इस कदम से विश्व के अनेक देशों का मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में विश्वास और सुदृढ़ होगा। मुझे खुशी है कि हमारी टीम्स ने मिलकर एक्सपांशन के गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स, स्टैंडर्ड्स, क्राइटेरिया और प्रोसीड्यूर पर सहमति बनाई है और इनके आधार पर आज हम अर्जेंटीना, इजिप्ट, ईरान, सऊदी अरब, इथियोपिया और यूएई का ब्रिक्स में स्वागत करने के लिए सहमत हुए हैं। सबसे पहले मैं इन देशों के लीडर्स और वहां के नागरिकों को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। मुझे विश्वास है कि इन देशों के साथ मिलकर हम अपने सहयोग को एक नई गति और नई ऊर्जा देंगे। भारत के इन सभी देशों के साथ बहुत ही गहरे संबंध है, बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक संबंध है। ब्रिक्स की मदद से हमारे द्विपक्षीय सहयोग में नए आयाम अवश्य जुड़ेंगे। जिन अन्य देशों ने भी ब्रिक्स से जुड़ने की अभिलाषा व्यक्त की है, भारत उनको भी पार्टनर कंट्रीज के रूप में जुड़ने के लिए कॉन्सेंसस बनाने में योगदान देगा। फ्रेंड्स, ब्रिक्स का विस्तार एवं आधुनिकीकरण इस बात का संदेश है कि विश्व के सभी इंस्टीट्यूशंस को बदलते समय की परिस्थितियों के अनुरूप ढलना चाहिए। ये एक ऐसी पहल है जो 20वीं सदी में स्थापित अन्य ग्लोबल इंस्टीट्यूशंस के रिफॉर्म के लिए एक मिसाल बन सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, अभी मेरे मित्र रामाफोसा जी ने भारत के मून मिशन को लेकर के ढेरों बधाइयां दी और मैं यहां कल से अनुभव कर रहा हूं, हर किसी से बधाइयां मिल रही हैं और दुनिया भर में भी इस सफलता को एक देश की सीमित सफलता के रूप में नहीं, लेकिन पूरी मानव जाति की एक महत्वपूर्ण सफलता के रूप में स्वीकार किया जा रहा है। ये हम सभी लोगों के लिए अत्यंत गर्व का विषय है और भारत के वैज्ञानिकों को पूरे विश्व की तरफ से अभिनंदन का अवसर है। फ्रेंड्स, कल शाम भारत के चंद्रयान ने चांद के दक्षिण ध्रुव पर सॉफ्ट लैंडिंग की। ये केवल भारत के लिए ही नहीं, बल्कि पूरे विश्व के वैज्ञानिक समुदाय के लिए एक बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है। और जिस क्षेत्र में भारत ने अपना टारगेट तय किया था, वहां पहले कभी कोई प्रयास नहीं हुआ है और ये प्रयास सफल हुआ है, तो बड़ा डिफिकल्ट टेरेन के ऊपर विज्ञान हमें पहुंचा पाया है। ये अपने आप में विज्ञान की, वैज्ञानिकों की बड़ी सफलता है। इस ऐतिहासिक अवसर पर आप सबकी तरफ से मुझे भारत को, भारत के वैज्ञानिकों को और दुनिया की वैज्ञानिक कम्युनिटी को जो बधाई के संदेश मिले हैं, मैं सार्वजनिक रूप से आप सबका मेरी तरफ से, मेरे देशवासियों की तरफ से और मेरे वैज्ञानिकों की तरफ से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं। थैंक यू।
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Modi. It now gives me the pleasure to ask President Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China, to make his statement.
尊敬的拉玛福萨总统，尊敬的各位同事，各位记者朋友，很高兴同大家见面。
I am pleased to join you here. At the outset, I wish to thank President Ramaphosa and the South African government for the thoughtful arrangements they made for the BRICS summit this year. BRICS countries are all countries with important influence and shoulder important responsibilities for world peace and development. During the summit, we had in-depth exchanges on the current international situation and BRICS cooperation, reached broad consensus, adopted the declaration, and achieved fruitful outcomes. Leaders of the 5 countries unanimously agreed to invite Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Iran, and Ethiopia to the BRICS family as official members. China congratulates these countries and highly appreciate the efforts made by our chair, South Africa, and President Ramaphosa. This membership expansion is historic. It shows the determination of BRICS countries for unity and cooperation with the broader developing countries. It meets the expectation of the international community and the common interests of emerging market countries and developing countries. The expansion is also a new starting point for BRICS cooperation. It will bring new vigor to the BRICS cooperation mechanism, further strengthen the force for world peace and development. I am confident as long as we work with a common purpose, there's a lot that BRICS cooperation can achieve, and the future will be bright for BRICS countries. Let us work together to write a new chapter of emerging market countries and developing countries working together in unity for development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Xi. Ordinarily, in the acronym of BRICS, after Brazil, Russia, India, and China having spoken, it would now be the opportunity for the President of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, to speak. But he has already spoken. So that brings us to the end of our press statement. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance. We have reached the end. Thank you.
They saw So there you saw the briefing of the 5 leaders, the BRICS leaders, related to the declaration at the 15th BRICS Summit, which is also called the Johannesburg II Declaration, which was unanimously adopted. And one of the biggest takeaways from that is that an announcement has been made about not only that the modalities and criteria as well as the guidelines have been worked out for the expansion of BRICS, but it was also announced that 6 countries will be incorporated. They will be included in the BRICS now, and these 6 countries are Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE. And their membership will become effective from the 1st of January 2024. If you heard what India's Prime Minister Modi said, that it tells us that BRICS is open to modernization and changing with the times, because this is what is the message that goes out to all international institutions, that they need to change with times and acknowledge how things have been changing in the world, evolving situations where certain countries are emerging, and those realities must be acknowledged through change in structures and through reform as well. It shows that BRICS is a vibrant and a very responsive organization, and he's also said that the other countries that want to join BRICS, there would be efforts by India to build consensus on that as well. And in the meantime, he said, as countries that can be associated, they can be on board as well. He also mentioned the fact that he's been getting a lot of congratulatory messages through yesterday after Chandrayaan-3 landed on the moon, and he also again mentioned that this is not the singular achievement of one nation, but it is for the benefit of the entire world. All the leaders supported the expansion move as well, and they further talked about how this will give added strength to the collective efforts the BRICS is making for global peace and prosperity, even with relation to the new development bank. Another thing which has emerged is that a task has been handed out to the finance ministers of the BRICS countries and the central bank governors to figure out how to proceed on that goal of ensuring that more and more trade and economic exchanges happen in the national currencies and other transactional means between the BRICS members and other countries as well that want to associate with the BRICS. The BRICS will be expanded now. We don't know if there will be a change of nomenclature as yet, because that's also something that's been speculated, but there was no word on that at the moment. So for now it stays BRICS, but it will be an enlarged BRICS from the 1st of January 2024 with 6 new countries joining in, and all the leaders have congratulated the leaders and the citizens of these countries as well on the prospect of joining BRICS. They will serve as a force multiplier for the organization, for the grouping. Let me once again bring in Ambassador Prabhu Dayal to talk about this development. Well, not much left for speculation now. We know. Can you tell us the significance really of the choice of these 6 nations, Ambassador Dayal, in terms of how their membership has been accepted already after the modalities of their joining in was finalized, and then of course we'll take it from there.
Well, Gautam, earlier we were discussing this issue, and I had in fact mentioned countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE and Egypt, which would bring more heft to BRICS. I had mentioned, for instance, that BRICS wants to strengthen the bank, the new bank, so that its capacity to help the global south increases. So by bringing in countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE, this aspect is being attended to. Of course, there is a need to give greater representation to Africa. That's where Ethiopia comes in. There is a greater need to give representation to the Islamic bloc from Asia, and that's where a country like Iran comes in. Of course, there is the need to give its due place to Egypt, which has been a major player along with India during the non-aligned movement days. Egypt has been pursuing a policy of being not aligned with either Russia or the United States in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war. it has maintained neutrality. So we need to bring in countries like Egypt. I also thought that perhaps a country like Indonesia could become a member in the initial stage itself. But what will be very interesting will be how discussions take place in regard to the further expansion of BRICS. That is to say, which countries are now going to be brought in the second phase. And I'm sure that Prime Minister's discussion with the other leaders of the BRICS countries would devote some attention to this aspect. Now, I read in the media what I had always suspected, that China would want to bring Pakistan into BRICS. Now, India has, of course, made it clear that Pakistan doesn't really fit in BRICS. First of all, it would not bring any economic content into BRICS because it is going around the world with a begging bowl. Right. So how will it make any sort of contribution to BRICS and enable BRICS to assist the countries of the global south? Moreover, we have serious concerns where Pakistan is concerned because Pakistan has been following the policy of state-sponsored terrorism. Correct. And I'm sure that in Prime Minister's bilateral discussions, he will take up the global challenge of terrorism. He will, of course, underline what he has been saying earlier also on different occasions, that countries which indulge in sponsoring terrorism are really working against the international order and that they should be pulled up rather than given more importance. China, of course, has the sort of relationship with Pakistan where it feels that it would be able to use Pakistan's membership of BRICS to its advantage. So there will be some contentious issues which will be discussed. Yes, and I'm sure that it is not going to be easy to include countries in the second phase if a country like China, which is an important member of BRICS, wants to bring in countries like Pakistan. So the second phase will be perhaps more challenging because there will be some attempts, particularly by China, to change the very structure and character of BRICS. I would also like to mention that, Prime Minister has been repeatedly emphasizing the need for reforming the global system. That is to say, reforms in the United Nations. And I'm sure that he will be discussing certain aspects relating to this during his bilateral meetings. There is, without doubt, the need to increase the number of permanent members of the United Nations. China has said that it favors giving a permanent seat to an African country. But it has been opposing India's membership.
I wanted to ask you about one aspect, in terms of the inclusions now that have been done, which will come into effect from the 1st of January 2024, do you feel that there is some effort to at least change the dynamics of how oil is traded around the world? Because right now it's dominated by the dollar, but with the expanded BRICS, the two biggest consumers around the world of oil, India and China, are already there, and then a lot of oil producers are joining in, apart from one big oil producer already in the mix, which is Russia.
Well, there is no doubt that China will try to use its position in BRICS to somehow influence the oil trade. But countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE are not going to be swayed by what China thinks. They have their independent views. Of course, China has been talking about de-dollarization and shifting away from dollar. It has been trying to spell out the idea of having a BRICS currency. But having a BRICS currency at this stage is very premature. And I think the position which India has maintained has been the right one. That is to say that countries should strengthen their own currency. We have been steadfastly emphasizing the need that we attach to the importance which we attach to strengthening the rupee. And we are achieving a considerable amount of success in this regard. But if a country like China wants to really overturn the nature of global trading, including trading in the oil sector, then I don't think this is going to happen anytime soon. And this whole idea of having a BRICS currency is far too premature.
Right, definitely. That is something that has been stated very clearly, although we've seen both China and Russia sort of saying that there is need to continue working on figuring that particular piece of the puzzle out. But let's try and bring to our viewers just what happened a few moments earlier, the big announcement that was made related to the expansion by the chair of the BRICS summit this time around, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Listen to what he said when he made that big announcement about the expansion of BRICS.
As the 5 BRICS countries, we have reached agreement on the guiding principles, standards, criteria, and procedures of the BRICS expansion process, which has been in discussion for quite a while. We have consensus on the first phase of this expansion process. We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024.
So there you have it. That's a big announcement. That's because the guidelines and the criteria has been figured out in terms of how BRICS should be expanded, and on those lines it's been decided to add 6 countries at the moment. There are other applicants as well, but in a sense, Ambassador Prabhu, if I could ask you, does this give BRICS a charter really? Once you have come up with these modalities, it gets an informal sort of a charter as well, doesn't it?
Well, I think they will probably also work towards formalizing the charter and maybe even setting up a secretariat. Because if it was just an informal grouping of 5 countries, it was one thing. But if there are plans to include now 6 countries and then further expand it, and then it will assume the character which would require more backup, and they may ponder at this aspect also. But I think that there is a need for expansion because BRICS does have to increase its footprint. At the moment, it was very restricted. And with the global situation being what it is, Russia is engaged in a war which doesn't seem to be coming to an end. China is using the Russia-Ukraine war to increase its own heft. And the countries of the global south are being hurt in a very big way. So there is a need to relook at the structure and the membership of BRICS to make it more inclusive and to make it an institution which will be able to meet the challenges of the present day world. And therefore I think the expansion of BRICS will be accompanied with more formal structuring of this institution and giving it the shape which it requires if it has to meet the challenges head-on which are being posed in the geopolitical and the geoeconomic area.
And what sort of a message does this send out, this move send out to all the global institutions from governance such as the United Nations to finance such as the IMF and the World Bank?
Well, there will be discussions with a whole host of institutions on the aspect of strengthening the ability of the BRICS Bank, or the new bank, to be able to finance countries and their needs in a very effective manner. There is some disenchantment with the World Bank. And it has grown because the anxieties of the global south countries have increased. So there is a widely perceived need to have an institution which will look directly at the financial requirements of the developing countries, and hence this bank which was set up some years ago, and which has been playing a very useful role, the BRICS Bank, the new bank. I think the need to strengthen it is very, very widely accepted by the BRICS members, and therefore there will be discussions, as I said earlier, with international institutions on how this organization can play a more effective role than it has already been doing.
Right. Well, we'll be talking about this further as well because this is a big development that is taking place. The expansion of BRICS has been announced, 6 new countries in the mix. Thank you so much for joining us for the moment, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. And that's all we have for the moment in this edition of News, an extended one at that, with that big ticket announcement being made in Johannesburg. But all the latest will continue right here on DD India. Keep watching.